Nobody remembered processing her. The registration officer at the Sovereign Military Academy checked 3,000 recruits that day. He remembered the 8-armed Kelthari who argued about dormitory assignments. He remembered the gas-breathing Vanish who needed special quarters. He remembered the twin Raskari who kept finishing each other's sentences. He did not remember the human woman who handed him her documents without saying a word. Danny Reyes moved through the crowd like water through stones. She was average height, average build, with brown hair tied back and eyes that looked at everything while seeming to look at nothing. When the officer asked her questions, she pointed to answers on a small tablet. He stamped her papers and waved her through, already forgetting her face before she walked away. The academy floated in orbit above Basera, a trading world of endless commerce. 800 new recruits from 200 species filled its halls that day. They came to become elite soldiers, diplomats, intelligence officers. They came to prove themselves. Danny came to watch. The orientation hall thundered with the commandant's voice. He was a massive Grothian, all muscle and scales and battle scars. He spoke of honor, sacrifice, and the glory of service. Recruits cheered. Fists pumped the air. Species who had fought wars against each other now sat side by side, united by ambition to eye in the back row. A human woman sat perfectly still. She did not cheer. She did not write notes. She watched the commandant's gestures, noted which phrases made different species react, observed which recruits leaned forward with hunger and which leaned back with doubt. Her bunkmate was a Marathi named Prill. The amphibious alien had blue-green skin, large golden eyes, and a mouth that never stopped moving. She talked about her homeworld, her family, her dreams of becoming a fleet commander. She asked Danny dozens of questions. Danny answered with small nods, occasional shakes of her head, and sometimes a few words typed on her tablet. "You don't talk much, do you?" Prill asked on their first night. Danny typed, "No, that's okay." Prill said cheerfully, "I talk enough for both of us." The first combat assessment came on day 3. Recruits demonstrated their species' natural abilities. The Kelthari showed their 8-armed coordination. The crystalline Sonari proved their bodies could withstand plasma burns. A Thornaki lifted 3 times its body weight. When Danny's turn came, she walked to the center of the arena. Instructor Relith, a towering insectoid Kathrani with mandibles sharp enough to cut steel, watched with 4 compound eyes. "Human female," he announced. "Demonstrate your capabilities." Danny performed the minimum required movements. Basic strikes, basic blocks, basic footwork. Nothing impressive, nothing terrible. Exactly average. Relith's mandibles clicked with disinterest. He typed into his evaluation tablet, "Human female. Unremarkable. Low priority for advancement." Danny returned to her place among the other recruits. No one looked at her. No one remembered her performance 5 minutes later. That night, while Prill snored softly in the bunk above her, Danny lay awake in the darkness. Her eyes were open, but she was not looking at the ceiling. She was replaying the day, every instructor's name, every instructor's habit. Relith favored his left side when turning, old injury, probably. The commandant touched his neck when lying, pressed his scales flat when speaking truth. The security officers changed shifts every 6 hours, but the night shift always arrived 4 minutes late. The academy had 7 main corridors, 42 classrooms, and 12 training arenas. The ventilation system hummed at a frequency that suggested the filters needed replacement. The mess hall's 4th serving station was positioned directly under a security camera blind spot. 3 recruits were cheating on their entrance evaluations. One instructor was having an affair with a supply officer. The commandant had a secret drinking problem that showed in the slight tremor of his hands during morning addresses. Danny saw all of it. She remembered all of it. She filed it away in the endless library of her mind, not knowing why, not planning anything, simply doing what she had always done. Watching, remembering, preparing. On Earth, in a small fishing village on a cold coastline, a little girl had once learned that silence meant survival. Raiders had come in the night. They had killed everyone who screamed, everyone who ran, everyone who drew attention. A 7-year-old girl had hidden in a closet for 3 days, watching through the slats, memorizing patrol patterns, learning when it was safe to breathe and when it was not. She survived because she was silent. She survived because she watched. 17 years later, the habit had not broken. Prill mumbled something in her sleep about home. Danny listened to her breathing, calculated her sleep cycle, noted that her roommate would wake in approximately 4 hours and 12 minutes. Then Danny closed her eyes. But even in sleep, part of her kept watching. It always did. Somewhere in the Academy's intelligence division, an automated surveillance system logged another day of footage. Thousands of hours from thousands of cameras, filed away and forgotten. Years later, an analyst would review that footage and find something impossible: that a single human woman, present in every frame, yet noticed in none. Always positioned perfectly, always watching, but that discovery was still far away. For now, Danny Reyes was just another recruit. Unremarkable, forgettable, invisible, exactly as she intended. Seasons changed on the station's artificial displays. Winter painted the observation decks white, then spring turned them green, then summer gold, then autumn red. The cycle repeated 3 times. Classes came and went. Instructors rotated. Recruits graduated or washed out. Through it all, Danny Reyes remained exactly where she was, present in every room, remembered by none. In her first year, she passed every exam with exactly 72%. Not high enough to earn attention, not low enough to raise concern. She deliberately failed one physical assessment, pretending to twist her ankle during the climbing trial. The medical officer spent 3 minutes checking her, then cleared her for light duty. Prill became her protector without realizing it. When other recruits made jokes about the silent human, Prill stepped between them. "She's worth 10 of you," she would snap. "She just shows it differently." Danny never thanked her with words, but she memorized the names of everyone who mocked her roommate, noted their weaknesses, and filed the information away. Just in case. At night, while the station slept, Danny practiced. She found maintenance corridors that security never patrolled, empty storage rooms with enough space to move. She worked on combat techniques she had seen once and remembered perfectly. Her body learned what her instructors never taught her. By the end of year 1, she knew the patrol schedule of every security officer on the station. She knew which doors had faulty locks, which cameras had blind spots, which maintenance workers could be befriended with small kindnesses. Year 2 brought harder challenges. A cheating scandal erupted when 12 recruits were caught sharing test answers through a hidden network. The Academy launched an investigation that took 3 weeks. Danny had noticed the scheme in month 4. She had identified all 12 cheaters, mapped their communication methods, and calculated exactly when they would be caught. She said nothing. It was not her concern. During a hostage simulation, her squad was given 20 minutes to resolve a crisis scenario. They argued, planned, debated approaches. Danny waited until 18 minutes had passed, then moved. She crossed the room in 8 seconds flat, disarmed the simulated hostage taker, and freed the captives using a technique that exploited a weakness in Grothian joint structure, a weakness she had observed months earlier when watching the commandant stretch after morning exercises. Her squad leader stared. "How did you do that?" Danny typed on her tablet. "Lucky guess." He accepted the explanation. He took credit for the successful mission. Danny led him. Instructor Relith began to notice things in year 2. Small things. The human woman was always positioned optimally in any room, back to wall, eyes on exits. She never startled at sudden sounds. Her gaze tracked movement before it happened, as if she knew what would occur before it did. He pulled her file. Grades, adequate. Performance reviews, average. Disciplinary record, empty. Nothing remarkable. Nothing concerning, yet something bothered him. Some instinct built from 40 years of training soldiers. He watched her more closely for a month, but she gave him nothing. She was invisible even when observed. He closed her file and moved on. A mistake he would later regret. Year 3 was field exercises. Live training on hostile worlds with real dangers. Danny's squad was deployed to a jungle moon where everything wanted to kill them. The plants, the animals, the weather itself. On day 4, they were ambushed. Predators attacked from 3 directions. The squad leader panicked, ordered a retreat into a canyon that would have trapped them. Danny grabbed his arm. She pointed in a different direction. "That's a dead end on the map," he protested. She shook her head. She pointed again, more firmly. Something in her eyes made him listen. He ordered the squad to follow her. Danny led them through passages that were not on any map. She had memorized the moon's geological surveys during the briefing, noticed erosion patterns that suggested hidden cave systems, and calculated 3 escape routes before they had even landed. The squad survived. The leader took credit. Danny led him. Graduation came on a cold, artificial morning. 800 recruits had become 300 graduates. They stood in neat rows while medals were given, honors announced, and futures promised. Danny received no honors. No special recognition. No medals. Her name was read once. Quickly, lost among dozens of others, she shook the commandant's hand. He smiled politely and immediately looked past her to the next graduate. He would not remember her face. 5 minutes later, in her quarters, Danny packed her few belongings. Prill sat on her bunk, tears streaming down her blue-green cheeks. 3 years, Prill whispered. You're my best friend, and you never said more than 20 words to me. Danny paused. She walked to Prill and did something she had never done. She hugged her. Then she typed on her tablet. You were my friend. Thank you. Prill sobbed harder. Danny picked up her bag and walked toward the shuttle bay. 3 years of perfect invisibility. 3 years of watching, learning, preparing. She had mapped every inch of a top-secret military installation. She had profiled every instructor, officer, and fellow cadet. She had identified weaknesses in security systems that their own designers had missed. She had done all of this without conscious intent, without malice, without planning. She had simply watched, as she always did. The corridor to the shuttle bay was long and empty, until at one point 20 armed figures in intelligence uniforms stepped out of the shadows. They surrounded her, weapons raised. The crystalline being in a director's uniform approached. Danny Reyes, you will come with us. Danny looked at the armed officers, calculated 17 ways to escape, and dismissed them all. Then she nodded and followed them into the darkness. Her silence, it seemed, had finally been heard. The file had been read 11 times, and Director Soneth still could not believe what she was seeing. Her crystalline body pulsed with shades of orange and red, colors that her species displayed only in moments of deep disturbance. 3 centuries of monitoring threats to galactic stability had taught her to recognize danger in all its forms. She had identified rogue AI before they activated. She had detected biological weapons hidden in cargo ships. She had uncovered assassination plots years before they matured. But this was something new. The interrogation room was featureless gray walls and harsh white light. The human woman sat at the center table, hands folded, posture relaxed. She had not moved in 47 minutes. She had not asked for water, food, or explanation. She simply sat, watching the one-way glass with eyes that seemed to look directly at Soneth despite the barrier between them. Soneth entered with 2 analysts. The human's gaze shifted immediately, tracking their movement, assessing their positions. Soneth noticed the woman's eyes pause briefly on each analyst, measuring them, categorizing them. You have been flagged by our surveillance systems, Soneth said. We need to understand why. The human pulled out her tablet and typed. She turned it so Soneth could read. I completed my training. Nothing more. Soneth gestured to her analysts. Show her. The first analyst, a nervous Valari with trembling antennae, activated a holographic display. Data streams filled the air. During your 3 years at the academy, he began, our systems detected no anomalies. Your performance was average. Your behavior raised no flags. You were, by every measure, unremarkable. The human watched without expression. However, the analyst continued. After graduation, a routine AI analysis performed a retroactive pattern review. The results were unexpected. He pulled up the first data cluster. You mapped the complete layout of the Sovereign Military Academy, including 7 classified sections you never officially accessed. Security footage shows you never entered these areas. Yet your movement patterns prove you know exactly where they are. The human blinked once. She said nothing. You identified and memorized the psychological profiles and personal weaknesses of every instructor, officer, and all 800 fellow recruits. Our behavioral analysts needed 6 months to compile profiles this detailed. You did it by watching. The second analyst stepped forward. Your graduation thesis was titled Supply Chain Logistics in Remote Outposts. We almost didn't examine it. The topic was deliberately boring. She pulled up a document analysis. Hidden within the logistics data was a complete blueprint for crippling the galactic supply network. You identified 17 critical nodes whose simultaneous failure would cause cascading collapse across 400 systems. Our strategic planners have been working on similar analysis for decades. Your thesis solves problems they haven't cracked yet. Soneth watched the human's face. Still no expression. Security footage analysis, the first analyst resumed, reveals a consistent pattern. For 1,095 days, you were never where you were supposed to be. Yet you were also never where you weren't allowed to be. You existed in the spaces between, observed everything, and triggered nothing. The second analyst's voice grew quieter. You cultivated relationships with maintenance workers who have access to the station's reactor core, life support systems, and weapons armories. You befriended them through small kindnesses. They would do favors for you without question. The human typed on her tablet. I was polite. They were lonely. Your combat assessment scores, Soneth said, indicated below average reflexes and spatial awareness. We ran analysis on your incidental movements throughout your time at the Academy. Your true capabilities exceed our special forces standards by significant margins. The human's eyes met Soneth's. For the first time, something flickered there. Not fear, not anger, curiosity. You did all of this, Soneth said slowly, and we did not notice. Not once. Our entire security apparatus, thousands of cameras, hundreds of analysts, AI systems monitoring billions of data points, failed to detect a single human woman who, without speaking a word, made herself capable of destroying us. The human typed. I had no intention of destroying anything. We know, Soneth said. That is what frightens us. She sat down across from the human, her crystalline form settling into a posture of exhaustion. What were you planning? The human typed. Nothing. Then why? Why learn all this? Why prepare so thoroughly? The human considered the question. Her fingers hovered over the tablet for a long moment before she typed. I was learning. In case I ever needed it. Needed it for what? I don't know. Survival. Escape. Protection. I don't plan these things. I simply see them. I notice patterns. I remember everything. I prepare for possibilities that may never happen. Soneth leaned back. You're saying this was unconscious? Automatic. The human nodded. You're saying this is simply what humans do. Another nod. Soneth felt the weight of 3 centuries pressing down on her. She had faced threats from warships and weapons, from plagues and conspiracies. She had never faced something like this, a species that prepared for everything without intending to. That watched everything without trying. That remembered everything without effort, a species that could dismantle civilizations by accident. She rose and walked to the door. Danny Reyes, by the authority vested in me as Director of the Galactic Intelligence Bureau, you are hereby classified as a Tier 1 threat to interstellar security. The human's expression did not change. Soneth paused at the door. For the record, no individual biological entity has ever received this classification before. You are the first. She left the room. Behind her, the most dangerous creature the galaxy had ever identified sat quietly in her chair, hands folded, eyes watching, waiting to see what would happen next, as she always did. Admiral Vren threw the file across his desk with enough force to scatter papers onto the floor. This is madness, he growled. His scales were dark green, scarred from 6 wars and 40 years of service. He had commanded fleets that shattered enemy armadas. He had stood on burning bridges and refused to retreat. He had looked death in the face and laughed. But this file made no sense. A human woman who never spoke, he said, who never fought, who received no honors and earned no recognition, is now classified above rogue artificial intelligence and biological weapons. A single person rated more dangerous than a warship. Director Soneth stood before him, her crystalline form patient. The classification is accurate, Admiral. She's one human. She weighs perhaps 60 kilograms. My personal guard could neutralize her in seconds. Your personal guard would not see her coming. Vren's eyes narrowed. Around the table, 6 other admirals watched with expressions ranging from amusement to concern. This emergency briefing had interrupted their schedules, and most were annoyed. Show me proof, Vren demanded. Real proof, not algorithms and pattern analysis. Show me why I should fear this silent little creature. Soneth nodded slowly. Very well. I propose a test. She outlined her plan. Bring the human to Vren's flagship, the most secure vessel in the fleet. Give her quarters with guards. Let her remain for 24 standard hours. Then analyze what she accomplishes. Vren smiled, showing teeth designed for tearing meat. Done. My ship has defeated 3 enemy fleets. It can contain 1 human. The transfer was made the next morning. Dani Reyes arrived in restraints, escorted by 8 intelligence officers. She was placed in guest quarters, a small room with a bed, a table, and a viewing window. 2 guards stood outside her door. She did not try to leave. She did not ask questions. She sat on the bed, hands in her lap, and watched. 24 hours passed. Vren received the analysis report in his personal quarters. His hands trembled as he read it. During her confinement, the human never left her room. She made no communication attempts. She spoke no words. She simply sat and observed. But the analysis told a different story. Watching the reflection in her window when officers passed in the corridor, she identified the ship's command authorization codes. The reflections showed which keys they pressed on door panels. She memorized the sequences. Observing dust particles floating in the air, she mapped the ventilation system. The patterns showed airflow direction, pressure differentials, and maintenance access points. Counting footsteps outside her door, she calculated the guard rotation schedule. She knew exactly when each guard changed shift, how long they took to respond to alerts, and which ones were slower than others. Noting when her meal trays arrived and their temperature variations, she determined the Admiral's personal schedule. His meals were prepared alongside hers, and temperature differences revealed when he ate early, late, or skipped meals entirely. Listening to the hum of the ship's systems, she identified 3 structural weaknesses in the hull. Harmonic frequencies revealed stress points that the engineering team had missed. Vren read the report 3 times. Then he called Sanath. She never stood up, he said, his voice hollow. She just sat there, watching. Yes, Sanath replied. That is what she does. Vren ended the call. He sat alone in his quarters for a long time, staring at the wall. Then he made a decision that he walked to the human's quarters himself. His guards moved to follow, but he waved them away. He entered the room alone and closed the door behind him. Dani Reyes looked up at him. Her expression was calm, curious, waiting. Vren was the largest being she had encountered since arriving at the station. His presence filled the room with authority and controlled violence. He was a predator who had killed more enemies than most soldiers had met. And yet, looking at this small human woman, he felt something he had not felt in decades: fear. Why, he asked. His voice was rough. Why do you do this? Why learn to destroy everything around you? Dani picked up her tablet. Her fingers moved slowly, carefully. She typed, I don't learn to destroy. I learn to survive. By mapping my ship's weaknesses, by memorizing codes and schedules, by understanding. Knowing things makes me safe. If I know where the exits are, I can escape. If I know the patrol schedules, I can hide. If I know the weaknesses, I can avoid them. Vren shook his head. You could cripple my ship with what you learned in one day. Yes, she typed. But I won't. How do I know that? Dani looked at him with those quiet, watching eyes. She typed, because I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to be safe. Humans don't prepare for war, Admiral. We prepare for survival. We grew up on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to watch, to remember, to prepare. Not because we want to fight, because we are afraid. Vren stared at her for a long moment. You're afraid? She nodded. Of what? She typed one word. Everything. Vren turned and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the panel. You terrify us, he said quietly. Not because you might attack, but because we cannot see you coming. We cannot predict you. We cannot understand a mind that prepares for everything while intending nothing. He looked back at her. What are we supposed to do with you? Dani typed her answer, but Vren left before reading it. The tablet screen glowed with 2 words, trust me. 400 species gathered to decide the fate of humanity. The Galactic High Council chamber was a vast dome of living crystal, grown over millennia to house the voices of civilizations. Representatives filled rising tiers of seats, their forms ranging from gas clouds contained in magnetic fields to towering beings of living stone. They had gathered for emergencies before, invasions, plagues, the awakening of ancient weapons. They had never gathered to discuss a single person. The evidence is clear, announced the Thornaki delegate, his rocky voice grinding like mountains colliding. This human mapped a secure military installation without detection. She identified methods to collapse galactic infrastructure. She represents a threat that cannot be measured or contained. Murmurs swept the chamber. One human, the delegate continued. If one human can do this by accident, what could billions of them accomplish with intent? I move for immediate quarantine of the human home system. Quarantine is not enough, spoke a Valari representative, her antennae rigid with agitation. We must consider neutralization protocols. Surgical strikes against their military capacity before they realize their potential. More murmurs, some approving the Earth's ambassador rose from her seat. Rosa Castellan was 63 years old, with gray hair and weathered skin that showed decades of diplomatic service. She had represented humanity through 3 crises before. None had been this dangerous. Honored representatives, she said, her voice steady. I request permission to address the council. The chamber fell silent. Permission was granted. Rosa walked to the central speaking platform, aware of countless eyes upon her. She was one human among 400 alien delegations, and they were discussing whether her species should be destroyed. You fear us, she began. I understand. Danny Reyes accomplished something remarkable, and she did it without trying. This frightens you because you cannot predict what we might do next. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But you are asking the wrong questions. You ask, what is humanity capable of? The answer terrifies you. The better question is, why are we this way? She activated her own holographic display. Images appeared, not of weapons or military achievements, but of Earth. Predators hunting in darkness. Volcanoes erupting. Ice ages sweeping across continents. Humans evolved on a death world. Every day of our development, something tried to kill us. We survived not through strength or speed or natural weapons. We survived through awareness, through preparation, through the simple, desperate need to see danger before it saw us. She showed images of early humans, huddled in caves, watching the darkness beyond their fires. Our ancestors who did not watch, who did not prepare, who did not remember, they died. Those instincts are written into our very beings. We cannot stop watching any more than you can stop breathing. The Thornaki delegate interrupted. This explains nothing. Your survival instincts make you dangerous. Dangerous to whom? Rosa asked. In all of Danny Reyes's observations, did she ever plan an attack? Did she ever intend harm? She mapped weaknesses because her mind cannot stop looking for them. She prepared escape routes because her instincts demand it. She is not a weapon. She is a survivor. A survivor who could destroy us, the Valari representative replied. Rosa nodded slowly. Yes, she could, but she won't. And do you know why? She looked around the chamber at 400 species who had come together in fear. Because humans do not prepare to attack. We prepare to protect. She requested that Danny Reyes be brought before the council. The chamber erupted in protest, but eventually, the request was granted. Danny entered the chamber in simple clothing, escorted by guards. She looked small among the towering representatives, fragile among beings of stone and energy and crystal. She walked to stand beside Rosa, her eyes moving across the chamber, observing, measuring, remembering. Old habits. Rosa spoke gently. Danny, the council wants to understand you. Would you tell them why you don't speak? Danny looked at the hundreds of aliens staring at her. Beings who wanted her destroyed. Beings who feared her without knowing her. She pulled out her tablet and typed. Rosa read aloud. When I was 7 years old, raiders attacked my village. They came at night. They killed everyone who made noise. My mother told me to hide, to be quiet, to watch and wait. Rosa's voice grew softer as she continued reading. I hid in a closet for 3 days. I watched through the gaps in the door. I learned their patterns. I memorized when they slept, when they ate, when they looked away. On the 3rd day, rescue came. I survived because I was silent, because I watched. The chamber was utterly quiet. I cannot stop watching now. I cannot stop preparing. Not because I want to hurt anyone, because I am afraid that if I stop, they will come again, and there will be no one left to save. Rosa set down the tablet. This is what you fear. A traumatized child who learned that survival means vigilance. A woman who cannot turn off the instincts that kept her alive. She looked at the council with tired eyes. You can quarantine us. You can destroy us. But you will be killing people whose only crime is the need to feel safe. The ancient Sonari elder rose, her crystalline form catching the light. She had lived for 2,000 years and watched empires rise and fall. Perhaps, she said slowly, we have been asking the wrong question. Not is she a threat, but what might she become if we give her something to protect instead of fear? The chamber fell silent again. A new debate began, and somewhere in the center of the room, Danny Reyes stood watching, waiting, preparing for whatever came next, as she always did. The pirates never saw her coming. They had ambushed the diplomatic convoy in a dead zone between systems, where rescue would take hours to arrive. They boarded the ambassador's ship with weapons raised and demands ready. They took 30 hostages and settled in to wait. They did not know that one of those hostages had already mapped every corridor, counted every weapon, and identified every weakness in their formation. 4 minutes after the boarding began, it was over. Security footage would later show a small human woman moving through the ship like smoke. She disabled the first pirate before he knew she was there. She used his weapon to stun 2 more. She moved through ventilation shafts she had mapped by sound alone, emerging behind the pirate leader and ending the crisis with a single precise strike. She never spoke a word. The ambassador, a trembling Valari diplomat, stared at her rescuer with wide eyes. "Who are you?" Danny Reyes typed on her tablet. "Someone who watches." The Guardian Protocol had been the Council's compromise. After days of debate, they could not agree on whether humanity was a threat or an opportunity. So they chose a middle path. Danny would work with Galactic Intelligence, not as a prisoner, but as a protector. Her abilities would be directed toward those who needed help. She would watch, prepare, and act, but always in defense of others. She was given one partner, Prill, her old roommate, who had volunteered the moment she heard the news. "You need someone to talk for you," Prill had said, her blue-green skin bright with determination. "And I talk enough for 10 people." Their first year together became legend on a mining station at the edge of settled space. Workers were taken hostage by corporate enforcers. Danny mapped the facility in 6 minutes, identifying access routes that even the original engineers had forgotten. She guided rescue teams through vents, maintenance tunnels, and service corridors. Every hostage was saved on a luxury liner. An assassin stalked an ambassador who had survived 3 previous attempts. Danny identified the killer during a welcome reception, noticing that his eye movements did not match his stated profession. She intercepted him before he could draw his weapon. In a refugee convoy fleeing a dying world, thousands of lives hung in the balance when pirates blockaded their route. Danny calculated 17 different escape paths and selected the one with the highest survival probability. The convoy reached safety with 0 casualties. Each time, she worked in silence. Each time, she saved lives. Word spread through the underworld: avoid the silent guardian. Criminal organizations flagged her image with a simple warning: do not engage. You will not see her coming. Intelligence agencies across the galaxy studied her methods and failed to replicate them. What she did came from something they could not teach: a lifetime of watching, remembering, preparing. Admiral Vren requested a meeting on the anniversary of her threat classification. He found her in a garden on a peaceful station, sitting beside Prill on a bench overlooking a playground where children of a dozen species laughed and played. "I owe you an apology," he said, lowering himself onto the bench beside her. "I was afraid of you. I wanted to contain you, perhaps destroy you. I was wrong." Danny typed on her tablet. "Fear is natural. You did not know me. I know you now." He watched the children play. "You've saved more lives this year than my entire fleet." She typed. "I was always watching. Now I watch for them." Vren nodded slowly. "What can I do to help your work?" Danny considered the question. Then she typed, "Protect the quiet ones. The ones who watch and prepare. They are not your enemies. They are survivors. They are afraid. Give them something to protect, and they will never fail you." Vren read her words twice, then nodded. "I understand." He left her there in the garden, watching the children. Prill chattered beside her about nothing in particular: a new restaurant she had found, a funny thing she had seen that morning, plans for their next mission. Danny listened with half her attention while the other half did what it always did. She watched the children playing. She noted the location of every exit. She calculated response times for emergency services. She identified 3 adults who were watching their own children and 2 who seemed slightly nervous, possibly first-time visitors. She could not stop watching. She would never stop. But now, instead of preparing to escape, she prepared to protect. Do you ever wish you could turn it off? Prill asked suddenly. Stop seeing everything? Danny considered the question. A year ago, she might have said yes. A lifetime of hypervigilance was exhausting. Always watching, always preparing, always afraid. But now, watching a small human child help a young insectoid who had fallen on the playground, she felt something new. She typed, "No, because now I see something different." What? Danny watched the human child brush dirt off the insectoid's shell. She watched them laugh together and run off to play. She watched a dozen species growing up side by side, unafraid of each other. She typed, "Hope." For the first time that Prill could remember, Danny Reyes smiled. The galaxy had marked her as a threat because she was silent, because she watched, because she prepared for the worst while expecting nothing. They were wrong about her. She was never preparing for war. She was preparing to keep them safe, and now, finally, she could. The silent guardian sat in the garden, watching children play, and felt something she had not felt since she was 7 years old. Peace, not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of knowing she could protect what mattered. She was still watching. She always would be, but now, she watched with hope.